to start by having the panelists introduce themselves, and then I have a series of questions, and then at the end we will open it up for Q&A. All right. Folks in the seats are seated in order according to their names written up on the sign behind them, next to the glorious wildlife dry erase artwork that I did not do. So that if you need to remember who's sitting where, you can check that out. So as part of your introductions, panelists, what I'd like you all to do, in addition to, of course, sharing your name, tell us about your current profession, if you're currently a professional, if you're a student. Tell us about your intended profession and your career goals, as well as what got you to this point. That's kind of how we're going to kick off the introductions. All right, so we'll start with you, Tomas, if you're willing to go first.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? I'm Tomas Nocera. I'm a master's student, a graduate student here in Wildlife Fisheries and Department, studying bats. I'm originally from Argentina, but I moved here when I was young. And I kind of got, the question was how I got into
Yes, sort of. Yeah, what got you to this point? Why are you interested in this career?
So, I'm really interested in this career. Growing up, both in the woods and in the city of Argentina, Buenos Aires. So it kind of got two outlooks of just living in the woods here in New England and having the city culture of Buenos Aires as a background. And I kind of fell in love with just nature in general, fell in love with wildlife. You don't see much wildlife in Buenos Aires, so I kind of fell in love with that, and I thought about just pursuing that as a career, pursuing studying wildlife as just a general thing and becoming a professional. I became a graduate student not long ago in January. I was talking to Dr. Ford when I was doing my undergrad up in the University of New Hampshire, and he kind of set me up the path to become a graduate student and study bats. And we'll see where it goes after that.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm next. Hi, my name is Gloria Alvarez. I'm a graduate student working on my master's in the Department of Sustainable Biomaterials. I'm more on the packaging side though. And I've been here since undergrad, so I did my undergraduate here and then continued straight to my master's. So this, I believe, is my 6th year here. So I've been here for a while. And wait, what was the rest of the question?
That's it. You're good. Well, I mean, why did you choose to study this?
I kind of got into packaging by accident, in all honesty, because originally I wanted to do like graphic design. And then I realized packaging had a large design aspect. And funny now, I don't want to do the design route, I want to do the engineering route, because I realized I actually really like science. So that's what I'm working on.
I'm not a graduate student. I'm Maria Elisa Christie. I am here at OIRD Office of International Research, Education, and Development. I'm a geographer, and I teach a class cross-listed in geography, but I'm Director of Women and Gender in International Development. So it's not a regular department here. I have a multidisciplinary background. Geography is in itself multidisciplinary. And then my master's is in Spanish and Women and Gender Studies with an undergrad. Years before that, I was already not sure how I wanted to focus, so I had a triple major with history, Romance languages, and international studies. Since then, I've worked in that field and didn't come back to graduate school. I did 10 years of work after my undergrad, and then 2 more years before my PhD. And I've worked in environment and development for over 25 years in international organizations, both in the U.S., based in the U.S. and in Latin America, such as Oxfam America, Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide, Institute for Food and Development Policy, and others with names in Spanish that I'm not going to say. But I think one of my favorite jobs that kind of illustrates what I feel that I'm going to talk about more today is I worked for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality for maybe 5 years as coordinator of the 10-state retreat, which was a part of a program we called the Border Environment Dialogue, funded by Ford Foundation, and I set up an annual retreat facilitated between the 10 states, the 6 Mexican and 4 U.S. states, with the Secretaries of Environment and then the Border Environment hands-on manager. So that was very exciting, and it really drew on my strengths by the way, I am Hispanic, not Latino or Latinx, and I'm born in Spain, white, European. We'll talk about that when we get to the identity question. So my work's mostly been as a planner, organizer, and then development, but professionally that means fundraiser, right? So I was writing proposals for different organizations, and now, of course, I'm in international development. And then when I finally came to my PhD, I continued working with the 10 states throughout my PhD, and then did the regular kind of academic route, teaching. I taught in 6 universities and started, research publications with my PhD. So I taught as a geographer, I taught world, regional, culture and political ecology, and then my own course, food, cuisine, and kitchen space, which reflects my approach that I still take today in feminist political ecology, looking at everyday life and gendered spaces. In that particular case, I looked at food preparation and the social and cultural reciprocity networks, looking at central Mexico, looking at 3 communities, and that's in a very fun book that you can read, bestseller. No, I'm just kidding, academic books are never bestsellers. But it is, you don't make money, but it is an ethnography and more fun to read than most academic books, probably. So I think that's good, enough for now.
Good afternoon, and thank you guys for lunch. It's great. My name is Henriks, and I'm an associate professor at the Department of Sustainable Biomaterials. I've been with TEC since 2008. I started as industrial engineering. I was kind of interested in trying to improve things and make it better from the fishing point of view, and then I ended up going to natural resources. So I did a master's and a PhD on wood products technology / industrial engineering at Purdue University. So my family is always, they're farmers, and we always have farming land and also forest land, including natural forests and plantations. So at the end, it kind of turns out to be, a little, mostly motivated because my family. But anyway, that's kind of like what I do.
Hello, everyone.
Carol, before you start, sorry, we had a request for some of the folks in the back, if everybody could speak a little louder so we can hear your voices all the way to the back.
Hello, everyone.
Sorry.
My name is Franco. I'm from the Dominican Republic. I am a senior research associate at FREC, Forest Resources and Environmental Conservation. I did my bachelor in Dominican Republic in biology, and then I got a Fulbright scholarship to come to the States and do my master's in natural resources management. I then did a PhD in ecological economics and environmental policy. So a little bit interdisciplinary right there. And then I stayed for a postdoc in ecological economics. After that, I went back to the Dominican Republic, and I, since 2009, have been working in climate change policy. So today, I'm part of the negotiations of climate change at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, as part of the Dominican government delegation. And I negotiated first REDD+, reduction of emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. And now I'm negotiating agriculture in the adaptation component of the negotiations. So I have focused a lot on adaptation lately, but for a while I was working in mitigation through REDD+. So right now I'm also teaching 2 courses, a study abroad in the Dominican Republic, looking at the impacts of climate change to the island, and a grad course right now on the climate change and international policy framework, looking at climate diplomacy and the negotiations.
Thanks everyone for those introductions. All right, now to the meatier questions. So please share with us how you have navigated and managed your identity as a Hispanic or Latino, Latina, Latinx person in the workplace. And we don't have to go in order. Whoever wants to go first can go first. Any volunteers?
Like I said, I was born in Argentina, but I moved here to the United States, actually to Rhode Island, when I was very young. I was about 3 years old, And growing up in Rhode Island, it was the smallest town in the smallest state, coming from the big city, from a big country. But I kind of, growing up, my family kind of assimilated to the culture, to the American culture. So we kind of lost touch with the Argentinian culture. So growing up, although we still held traditions like speaking Spanish at home and like Christmas traditions and stuff like that, over the years, because we didn't have the money or the possibility to go back to Argentina as often as we would have liked to see family, we kind of started losing that identity as we are Hispanic or we were Argentinian. And so throughout the years, the last time I went to Argentina was when I was 9, and there was a 13-year gap between that. So I actually went back to last year and the year before that. But between those 13 years, when I was 9 and after I graduated college, I didn't really associate myself as Hispanic or as an Argentinian. But coming out of that, I didn't really notice that I held that belief until I actually went to visit again last year. And coming out of it, I was like, hey, this is part of me, this is part of my identity. I forgot the last question. How have I navigated my identity in the workplace? Navigating my identity as an Argentinian was never really a prime role growing up, because we kind of just assimilated to the culture. We kind of lost connection to that. But I kind of brought it back coming here to graduate school, coming here after I came back from visiting family, from traveling. I kind of found myself, it was like, oh, I am Hispanic, I am from Argentina. So now I've kind of grasped that identity a little bit more. And so navigating through the workplace, I've been doing that more in graduate school, kind of trying to find more people who are from Latin America, are from Hispanic places, just to kind of keep touch, keep growing that connection, keep that identity. Because I didn't know what I lost until I actually went back and found it.
Oh, I guess I'm automatically next. All right. So I'm, just for my background, I'm half Peruvian, half Mexican. I was born in Arlington, but I was raised for a few years in Ecuador. So that all gets jumbled up when people tell me, they're like, oh, you're this, right? So if I say I'm Mexican, no matter what comes after that, everyone's like, you're Mexican, right? So I always start with I'm Peruvian because my mother raised me. So my mom was a single mom for a while, and she's the one who raised me. So I always say I was raised Peruvian. And while I did grow up in Ecuador for a few years, my grandma who lives in Ecuador is also Peruvian. Our whole family on her side was Peruvian. They just happened to move to Ecuador. So I was raised Peruvian, but I'm still American because I've been here since I was 5 or so. So I've been through the whole system, and I have a lot of people. So as far as identity goes, I'm American and Peruvian mostly, and it's really hard when people are like, "Oh, you're Mexican automatically," and I'm like, "I wasn't raised Mexican. Technically, I am, but not really." So that's how my identity is. It's never really been an issue blatantly obvious how Hispanic I actually am until I came to tech. Because where I'm from Arlington, and I went to Wakefield, and that's the most diverse school in Arlington. And so there was a lot of people from all over the place where I was. So it never really hit me that there wasn't diversity in other places. And then I come here, and everyone I saw was white. I was the only Hispanic person in my dorm hall. And I didn't know anyone else here who spoke Spanish. Until a few months later, I found out this one guy I went to middle school with came here too, and I was like, I know one other Hispanic. So it was a huge culture shock coming here. I was like, oh wow, I'm not, I'm actually a minority. So that was weird here. And specifically in the workplace, I'm gonna talk about workplace more in when I was in high school and earlier college, because that's more actual work. Because there's a question that's school later, right? So that's different. But in the workplace, it wasn't much of an issue for a long time. I worked in a doctor's office for a couple of years. But there was one point where there was a couple Hispanics, and sometimes like on our breaks we would talk to each other in Spanish because we all spoke Spanish, so we would just have conversations like that. And they made it a rule that we weren't allowed to do that. We weren't allowed to speak Spanish in front of people who did not speak Spanish because according to them it was rude and wasn't inclusive. So that was like not great. But as far as like in the workplace, I've never had too many issues because I also don't have an accent. But I worked with my mother and she does have an accent. And I would see constantly people be really rude to her and think she didn't know what she was doing just because she had an accent. And she was like the smartest person there. Like she knew how to run the whole office by herself. But people would be like, no, you don't know what you're doing. Because she had an accent. Or her English didn't have the best grammar. So I'm lucky that I didn't have to go through with that because I don't have an accent. I came here when I was really young. I came here when I was 5. So I grew up learning English. But I have seen it be an issue. And I just kind of navigated like the best I can. And I do recognize that a lot of people like sometimes don't recognize I am Hispanic. And unfortunately that can be a good thing because then people don't assume bad things. So I guess that's how that gets.
Okay, that's interesting. You raised a lot of things. So I'm from Spain. I was born in Spain. I actually left Spain when I was 3 and lived in France for 5 years. So when I moved to the U.S. as a non-English speaker when I was 8, English was my 3rd language. And I already felt like an international person. And even though this is not, I didn't answer this in the first question, but what inspired me to do what I do is my love of travel. And that when I arrived, my dad's from northern New Jersey, and we went to the United Nations, and I saw the simultaneous interpreters, and I thought, that's what I want to be when I grow up. So I've been interested like in international communication and being a bridge between cultures since I was, just because I happen to be trilingual and come from different cultures. But I was saying to somebody the other day that I feel more Mexican than Spanish. I actually lived in Mexico for 11 years, and I'm a legal permanent resident in Mexico, though I've been out and there. So, you know, so I'm not paying taxes in Mexico anymore, but I have 3 sons who are, I was married in Mexico. I lived in Central America for several years also, and then I have 3 sons who are Mexican who I actually interviewed before coming, though that's a whole other topic. They identify differently in terms of whether they're Mexican, Latino, Mexican American, Latin American, and there are 3 shades of a color, and they say they're café con leche, different shades of café con leche. So I was trying to understand, because I'm not Latinx, where that is, over here. Anyway, so as a white, European Hispanic, my heritage is basically erased, and it's erased in part because I speak perfect English, as you can see. I also speak perfect Spanish. I've published in academic journals in Spanish as well as in English, and I actually did my master's in Spanish in order to. It wasn't easy that I became a professionally proficient in Spanish, but I realized that. Though my mother only speaks Spanish. I mean, she speaks English, but she refuses to and has a terrible accent and will speak to you as if you must understand. And she just like trains people around her to learn Spanish. And with my kids, I speak Spanish, but with everybody else, I speak English, including with my brothers, because when we moved to the U.S., we started speaking English as soon as it was very embarrassing to be a Spanish speaker in school, and it's embarrassing to have an accent. It was embarrassing for people to hear my mother speak Spanish. We didn't want to be caught speaking Spanish, and we were definitely the only Hispanics. I was in Yorktown High School eventually, and I was at a high school reunion recently, and anher girl said, do you remember we were the only Hispanics? We didn't even know that term. Like, I just knew that nobody, I just always felt kind of out of it. But having, perfected my written English and Spanish and not having an accent, it's really allowed me to have a lot of opportunities in my profession. And just so you know, when I lived in Mexico, I'm not considered American. I'm considered, the Spaniard, la Española, which being Spanish and being American, both are like, one is imperialist, one's colonialist, so both of them are kind of bad. But the way that I stand out in particular in terms of difference is that both with my Mexican family and my Spanish family, it's not my color, it's not where, my language, it's that I'm very tall, and that's very weird. I'm like way taller than everybody, and it's like, oh my God, here comes the giant person. Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Costa Rica, and the good thing about myself is, as soon as I open my mouth, they know that I'm not from here. I have this, when I started learning English, I was 25. That's when I moved to Indiana, and it was really hard. I can tell you that, because I took this class from Professor Dan Cassens, and man, he got his accent. And I was sitting there, I was taking 3 classes, and I just thought I wanted to come back. It was very hard. I was able to read and write, but the talking, it was very difficult. So I think I'm in a very different situation than all of you guys, because I came here very late. Usually when you're 25, you're pretty much done with life and you don't want to move. But we decided, let's do this, and I always, want to come here, and I had a bunch of friends that had come before to Purdue for doing undergrads and PhDs, and I was very motivated, and I got the opportunity to do it as well. So I decided, let's do this thing. But I agree that when you have an accent, they immediately they'll put you into this little compartment. That's not a question. But you know what? I don't give a damn about that. I don't care. I never care. I'm proud of what I am, and I have this broken English, and I don't have a perfect Spanish too. I don't know how you do that, but
It's hard. It takes an investment. It's not automatic.
You're the first person I know have a perfect Spanish. But anyway, I can tell you that my biggest challenge is to try to avoid to speak Spanish. And some of you might do, but I do hate it. And Paula knows about it. So we're trying to figure out how to say loggers in Spanish, and it took us a long time. But I don't like that. I think you need to either speak English or you speak Spanish. And the way it's going, and for me, I just can't accept that. I think it's going to go that way ultimately. There's nothing we can do, because that's the way we evolve. But the challenges, what I do, I teach here, I do research, but also I do extension. I have a 75% extension, and I'm here to help all the forest product industry in the Commonwealth. So what it means, I have to talk to those people. And wood product industry is, it's a wide industry, and sometimes I have to talk with somebody that is from Southeast, Virginia, and I'm like, I gotta grab the phone, So it could go, it goes one way or the other. But I think with work and really open your mind, and I've been lucky just to develop very good relationships with everybody. There are people that are very accepting. I speak a lot in the U.S. I travel a lot speaking in Latin America and Europe and everything. But in here, you see that there are people that are very accepting when you speak. There are people that are interested. They think you're kind of exotic in some way. So people start asking the question. Everybody likes Costa Rica. I don't know why. Oh, I want to go there. Oh, I just came back from there. So that's kind of a vehicle for me. So I think for me being here, it's been really important, because I've been able to connect a lot of people, like from all the people in Latin America. I do a lot of work in Central America and South America, and being here has been a great platform to connect people. So I love, being Latino, Hispanic. I don't even know this. You have to give me a lecture on that.
Costa Rico.
But it's been a great vehicle to connect people, students, all faculty, administrative people. So I never really care about, being differentiated. I just try to do the best I can, and when people get to know me, usually it's a good thing.
So I came here in the year 2000, to the United States. And the only thing my parents made me do when I was growing up was to take English courses. I didn't need to go to football games or sports or music or ballet or anything like that. Just English, which I really appreciate today. So I came here in 2000. I must say I am extremely lucky because everywhere I've been, from studying in SUNY, College of Environmental Science and Forestry, to today here, I have, maybe because it's been very international, or I have been together working with people that are extremely international, I have never felt any type of discrimination or anything like that towards me. On the contrary, everybody's extremely happy to work international. Everybody wants to know more about it. Everybody wants I do have an accent, of course, and it has not been a problem so far. So I'm, again, very lucky not to have experienced any of that. I have worked when I was in SUNY school, I went to Vermont, Portland, Oregon, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, where if you want to find diversity, don't go there. You won't find it. Especially Woods Hole, it's like you won't find it. And then here. And but I did have, my son grew up here. He was born in the States, and he lived some of his life in the Dominican Republic. And when I came for grad school, he came with me. He was back and forth here in the US, and my parents in the DR, since I was doing master's and PhD. And for him, I wanted to make sure he had the Latin roots. So he had that in him. So I knew he was going to learn English here, so I made sure he learned Spanish. So he has an upstate New York accent, because we lived there for so long. And he has the most Dominican accent you can ever imagine. So when I ask him, like, so they will ask, you're Hispanic, you're Latino, he's like, I'm Dominican. I'm like, okay. So he's very proud of his heritage, and I'm like, but you need to choose. They don't ask you if you're Latino or Hispanic, and he will say, he's like, I'm Dominican. I'm like, choose one. I'm like, okay, I'm Latino. And for him, he is Latino. He is very open to new cultures, which is great. He goes back to the DR and he just immersed in the culture, and he loves it there. He loves the food. Comes back here and it's the same thing. So what I did with him since he was born in both places, he belongs to both places, was make sure he had a sense of identity with both, which he feels completely. And if you ask him to choose, it's like he's both. He feels he's American and he feels he's Dominican. And he is very much family-oriented, which was something that for my culture is very important. And that's the most important thing I wanted to make sure he got. It was like family and parents and great-grandparents and cousins and the whole 9 yards. And so to be Latino for me and for him in that case has been a blessing.
Carol, you said the whole 9 yards. Did they use that expression in that? It's interesting for me, the language. I'm picking up the slang vernacular. So the fact you just said, and the whole 9 yards.
It's from here. I have been long enough that yes, it's from here.
We use the meter system in Costa
All 3 meters.
I guess the whole 3 meters.
So you have shared, kind of already touching on some challenges and or a lack of challenges, but if you could try to think of one positive experience that you've had as a result of your identity in school or in the workplace, and one challenging experience that you've had as a result of your identity. We'll just keep going in order. It seems to work. It gives everyone a break.
Let's do it. I think one challenge I've had before, I always say I'm from Argentina, and I always lead with that, just because I am from Argentina and that is part of my identity. I don't experience it very much, but I have experienced it before when I've applied to a work or I've been working where in Argentina, just the history of Argentina, of after World War II, I've had experience where people were like, just completely ignore everything after, oh, I'm from Argentina, and just say, oh, so you're a Nazi. And I think and I haven't experienced it here, I haven't experienced it in many places, but just a lot of, in some rare occasions, it's like they don't listen to anything. The only thing they know about Argentina is what happened after World War II. And so they automatically assume that everyone from Argentina is, say, Nazi. The other thing I've experienced is that maybe not a lot of people, not a whole lot, but people know where Argentina is. So I'm faced with like, oh, I'm from Argentina, where is it? Is it in Europe? Is it in Asia? So they don't really know where Argentina is. So I've had to kind of teach a lot of people where Argentina is, that it is a country, and it is a country in South America. But those are the only kind of challenging things I've experienced on rare occasions, where it's kind of just these labels of like, oh, they don't understand that Argentina is a country of its own, that we're not all communists or fascists, or Nazis or anything like that. They just stop and say, that's what you are. Those are kind of the only challenges I've experienced. But not here, anyway.
Do you have a positive?
A positive, yes, sorry. A positive, yeah. A lot of people, like from Costa Rica, as Henry was saying, a lot of people love Argentina, and they will say, oh, I love Argentina, I want to go there so bad, the steak is so good. So they really, the wine is so good. So it's really, people are open to it and want to talk about it, want to just share, want me to share about Argentina culture and stuff like that. And it's been really great, and a lot more people are receptive to that and are open to hearing about that. And just like being able to connect in just like food or wine or something like that, just to being able to connect with them and share that part has been really positive. I mean, a lot of people are open, they want to learn, and that's really nice.
Oh, wait, my turn. So I guess I'll start with an I feel like I always have to clarify my identity. Because like I said before, I'll be like, oh, I'm Mexican, and they automatically assume that. Or I've also had people be like, no, you're white. And I'm like, no, I'm Hispanic. And they're like, but you're white, your skin is white, you're white. And I'm like, I'm not white, I don't identify as white. And I've had people like tell me what I am, and I have to clarify a lot. And this has happened on multiple occasions. And like I said, I have a background from a lot of countries. So people will only listen to one country, and they'll be like, oh, you're from this one country. And I'm like, no, I have a lot of places. And I'm like, I'll just say I'm American. And sometimes that's when people are like, oh, you're American, you're white. And I'm like, I have pale skin, but I'm not white. I'm Hispanic. So that's been a challenge. Just always having to clarify what I am. I'm like, I'm a lot of things. I'm not just one thing. But those are parts of me. So that's been like a challenge, I guess. But one positive thing, at least in school, especially in our department, there's a lot of Hispanics, Latinos, a bunch of people are here. And everyone's like very inclusive and welcoming, and our department is really great with that. There's a lot of people, and we all relate to each other. And at least for me, like specifically, that's wonderful. I don't know about other departments, but our department is really welcoming, and that's been a really great experience as far as school goes. Undergrad was different. I was like the only Hispanic for undergrad, but like in masters, we're all like really diverse, and that's really great. Yeah.
So everybody's starting with challenges first. So I was thinking about that, and I definitely have my white privilege. So I would say my challenges only come from my kind of resentment at being invisible, at this idea that Hispanic, Latino is color, and so therefore it like erases your culture. But that's just a problem for me personally. I guess it's a like psychological problem, but it doesn't affect my economic opportunities. So I would say I don't have a challenge out in the workplace. Benefits or positives, yeah, pros and cons. Positives, I really love my work affecting change for environmental protection on the U.S.-Mexico border, and because I was based in Texas, where Mexico is really valued, unlike places like Virginia, especially southwestern Virginia, it was very important to have my foot in Mexico as well as Spanish and US. But more recently, here at Virginia Tech, we've hosted the Hispanic College Institute, and I've been called in along with many other professionals who are Hispanic, Latino, to be a, quote, Hispanic star, and to meet with all the juniors and high school students. They brought in, I think it was like 300 this last year, and we share our experience, and they kind of present their ideas to us, and so that's always fun. I mean, because one of my kind of goals in life is encouraging, young people, and I never think of it as any particular color of young people, and there it's always important that I can speak Spanish, because some of the people that are brought in, some of the kids that come in are really struggling. They're recent immigrants, and they're being recruited to come to see new opportunities, and it's always nice to be able to touch base with them in Spanish, and I think that's an additional thing I offer that makes me feel good. That's positive. It feels like I'm contributing something.
I never really had like a big challenge. I think, I mentioned before we came here when we were late, and we're very family oriented. We like to, when we were living down there, we used to go and see my parents and my in-laws pretty much every weekend. So that's kind of an important thing that it's really impacted us the first years. Now we kind of have learned from that. So that was kind of a more like a personal challenge, that contact. We kind of lose that, and I hope I can keep that with my children, but I don't know, maybe they would just leave me when they're 18, and I don't know. But I hope I think that's an important part that create us, that give us this identity we have of being as a whole family. I mean, other than what I mentioned before, I mean, just the accent thing, once people get to know you, things go way better. I always will have to live with that. Sometimes I have to repeat myself a couple of times, and then some people will ask you like a couple of minutes later, where are you from? I notice an accent there. I mean, I don't really bothers me. I actually like when people ask me, because that gives me a chance to explain better who I am. I think being here as who I am in this university is just a great venue. We have so much connections with every country in the world, and being part of that connection, I think, is important. And what I do, as I mentioned before, creating this platform to connect people all around the world has been really great. So I think being able to speak a different language other than American or English, it's very good, because it gives you an opportunity. So you have depending on projects and extension work, it definitely puts you in a competitive position. So, but I'm grateful to be here. I don't know if I could live in a different place other than the university. That's, if it's living in the U.S. or in a big city, I don't want to live in a big city. So this is probably the best place to be.
I guess my biggest challenge is I travel a lot to Latin American countries, and going back to the idea that we kiss and hug every time we see someone. So every time I come back from there, you might find me going like this to you, and then I stay on the air. Personal space. And that is, trust me, a challenge. I go back to the art, I do this to people, they look at my hand, they look at me, they look at my hand, it's like, what? And I go and hug and kiss. I come here like, hi, and people look at me like, what? So that ever happens with you, please forgive me. You can tell I just came back. And it is a challenge, because you feel bad. It's like, I'm invading your personal space, and sorry, and I just, so I start giving explanations, so suddenly I just go like this, hi. And it makes it easier. So that's a challenge in that sense for me. A positive thing, I think is great. I've been teaching either as a TA or as when I did the postdoc, or doing trainings, and the idea of bringing a different perspective from a developing country, from an island development state, to students, to other people, I think it's extremely important and gratifying. Because you're giving them something different. They're looking at different perspectives. They might be seeing it this way when you're talking to them, but well, how about vulnerable people? How about people who have no money or education? How are they looking at it? And actually, it helps them also come back from that perspective of a developing country to vulnerable people in the US. How are they looking at things? Or how we have the privilege in academia to look at things and analyze them and try to find solutions from our different perspectives and backgrounds. So that's been an extremely positive thing for me, to bring that and to share that with students and folks.
Thanks. Next question. Can you name one or two actions that you think we could take as an institution or as professionals that would make natural resource professions more welcoming to Hispanic, Latino, Latina students and employees? And try to think outside of higher education, right? You're free to answer however you want, but we'd like to hear a little bit about not just making this institution more inclusive or welcoming, but the fields that we're sending our students out into. How to make them more welcoming to Hispanic and Latino. We'll start with Tomas.
I'll start. This department, as Gloria said, or the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife, is great at diversity. I can go anywhere and we have faculty, we have graduate students coming from all different places. I know there's researchers from Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Colombia, all different parts of Latin America. Not just Latin America and South America, but also just around the world. And that's fantastic, and I applaud the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife for doing that. And I hope it's across the different departments and schools as well. Now, trying to open it up, the field of wildlife conservation for Latinos and Latinx and Hispanics. It is very much here in the United States we take, with the wildlife degree, you see a lot of people just like who have been raised in the United States, who have a mindset of hunting and fishing, who grew up with hunting and fishing, and that's all they want, and that's how they get into the field. So when we go expand out of this institution, a lot of biologists, a lot of wildlife biologists here always have that mindset of hunting and trapping, which is a great mindset, but coming from a different place, coming from Latin America or South America, where hunting may not be a big decision. Sometimes when we come into the field of wildlife biology, we're kind of inundated with these people up top who are like the mindset of hunters. This is how we're going to do conservation work. This is how we're going to do it. So trying to open that up and being like, that's not the only way wildlife conservation is done. That's not the only mindset we can have. Trying to open it up to different kind of mindsets that it just doesn't include that simple group, or that it doesn't include just where you come from Virginia or from wherever, but wildlife conservation is a global kind of field. And so instead of being in a workplace like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or something like that, that only deals with things that are happening right there in the U.S., right there in the state or in the town, when they employ students or they employ people from Latin America or Hispanic, they should kind of open that up, that this field is global, and it's not just your way or this place. I don't know if that made any sense. But, yeah.
Thanks.
So you're talking more like in industry. I'm thinking not just industry, but going also backwards and looking at like high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and being like, hey, this is a possibility for minorities. Because I've seen, like, at least in our department, it has gotten more and more diverse, and that means that the industry is later going to be more and more diverse. And I think that like investing in encouraging younger kids to go into like sciences, engineering, natural resources, all that sort of stuff, encouraging them, being like, hey, this is something you can do, would be beneficial to get diversity later on. It wouldn't have an immediate effect, it wouldn't be like right now, but later on it would. because also growing up, a lot of people I know, they don't think college is a possibility. They're like, it's too expensive, it's too far, my parents can't do it, I can't do it. So I think it's more a matter of being able to be like, hey, this is possible, and helping them make that possibility a reality, and being like, oh, you don't have to focus only on things you learn. Like, where I went to high school, before we didn't have like any engineering classes. It was all like the main courses and like a few extra sciences, a few extra art stuff, but there wasn't like a lot of extracurricular courses, like especially science-based, like engineering or physics or anything like that. But I went back, I think last year, and they are starting to get more of those courses. There was like a computer technology course, and that's great because that shows like, hey, this is a thing you can do. Because I didn't know that was a thing until I came here. I didn't know exactly what engineering was until I came to tech. And I feel like had I known what it was earlier on, that would have made me more interested in engineering earlier as opposed to like going through art first. So I think it would be a matter of like showing kids like, hey, this is something you can do. It's not something you have to do, but you can. And maybe it interests you. And it would be impacted later on.
So I don't know that I've thought beyond the institution, but I just wanted to say that there's so many initiatives going on in inclusion and diversity on campus, including through the undergrad recruitment, the graduate school, that bringing the professions that are represented in the college to those, and actually just working with everything they're doing to reach kids all over the state is something that would be a worthwhile investment. It would show people what things there are that they haven't even thought of as a possibility for a future. And it's not just through Virginia Tech, but then also Valhem, Virginia Latino Higher Education Network works throughout the state, not just with Virginia Tech, and probably has opportunities for Virginia Tech, colleges, departments to do things. So that's my...
I think one of the main things that help us to break down those barriers and be more accepting is traveling. Traveling. We live, at the university, most of faculty, they have traveled to some other country and some of the staff, but if you step out of the university, there are people like in jails or people that they don't even have a passport. It's so hard for those people to be accepting if they never travel. Going to a place, like Mexico, Dominican Republic, Spain, you gotta do that. You gotta do that because I always think that the best way to learn where you live is just to get out. And we don't do that, we're not gonna be accepted. So once you travel there, you create this connection. Let's say even if you go to Cancun for a spring break, whatever, then you create this connection. It's, oh man, yeah, you're from Mexico. Oh yeah, I've been there, blah, blah, blah. Everything starts there. So I'm very privileged to be here and be able to develop opportunities for our students to travel. And I had this class this morning, and I was a guest lecturer. I was invited. I told them at the end, here's this opportunity. We have so many opportunities at Tech. You need to get out. You need to go to other countries. It doesn't matter if it's on the same level of the U.S., like Western Europe, but look south in South America, Central America. We have great opportunities here, like John and Carol, and in New Zealand, if you want to go there. It's a long trip, by the way. In Costa Rica too. So I will ask people, out of the university, when you step out of Blacksburg, you talk to people, there are people that actually, I don't think they ever get out of Virginia. That helps a lot. If you travel, you create this connection. You will never forget about this. And I guarantee you 99% it will be a great experience. That's what I try to tell them. I have convinced some people. They already have passports, so it's good. Yeah.
I will go with what Henry just said. I was thinking about it, and we're working on it. We're getting much better. I think here at Tech, as given the opportunity of international work and international travel. There's Costa Rica, there's Panama, there's the DR, and that should continue. Because remember that you also want to, if you're thinking about Latinos and Hispanics, you're thinking about here, but also think about from outside this country coming here to Tech to study here. So having that international work, international research that you could do elsewhere, not just in Virginia, not just United States attracts students from here that are Latinos or Hispanic because they want to learn from other countries because that's their heritage. But Fulbright students, the students that come with the scholarships to study here at Virginia Tech and learn from us here because they don't have PhD programs or because they don't have the exact program that they want, come here. But they have the opportunity to come here, study, but still do their research in their own countries or other countries. Also, it helps also for internships. The more globalized, it's a globalized world, international, the more people we know outside of the United States, the more internship we can offer our students to see something different, to see a perspective, a different perspective of how things are done. And we can help them to get that with our own liaisons. So it's very tight. I think that's extremely important. And we're working on it. And I know we are, and we're proposing more study abroads. We're also having connections and providing information as to you want to do an internship in the area. I can get you an internship with government if that's what you want. Because we have the contacts. Let's do it in Mexico. Let's do it in Costa Rica. Where can we go? Where can we take our students? What opportunities can we bring to them?
Thanks. All right, we are just at the 1 o'clock mark. The last question is kind of a closing wrap-up question. But any other general advice that you would think would be helpful to Hispanic or Latino students or non-Hispanic Latino? Just any general advice you have to give, and then we'll open it up for questions. And you can pass if you don't have anything to add.
Thanks. Come back to me.
I would say just be who you are. Don't be afraid to show who you are. Even if that means you're sticking out, it's not a bad thing necessarily to stick out. That can be great. So just don't be afraid of being who you are. You might have to fight some people over it, but it'll be worth it. Okay,
So my thing wouldn't be directed at students, but more to like institutions, and everybody here belongs to an institution, but that is just to encourage people to go beyond labels. And I think Latinx, which is also a U.S. imposed label, risks as much as Latino as to be imposed on, and to remove the different identities that aren't just national, they're just based on all kinds of different experiences, which I really appreciate this panel and being invited here. And I think we've kind of shown that we don't fit under the same label.
Yeah, I guess for the students here, it's just keep your identity. I mean, we got to be proud of who we are, and this is a great community. For those that are not Latinos, maybe you can go and learn how to dance salsa, or come to watch a soccer game with a bunch of Latino people. You'll be impressed. It's an ever-changing experience. And World Cup qualifiers are next week, so there will be 2 opportunities, 2 games, one on Friday and then one on Tuesday. See, I know all of that stuff. It's great. It's a great time.
Just be open to new cultures, new ideas, new people.
I'll chime in. We all have a sense of familia. We all have a very big, close network of family and friends. So expand yourself, and there are a lot of places to meet other Hispanics, to meet other Latinos, especially on Wednesdays night, Salsa Tech. If you,
Where is it, by the way?
Sycamore Deli. It's right across.
downtown. The place that you have to walk downstairs
Oh,
to get
okay.
into.
So there is a sense of familia, and don't lose that sense of family, friends, and connect with people. Not just Hispanics, but connect from everyone. Build your own familia here.
Just have to say, speaking up for Spain, Mari Carmen Jimenez, a professor in Spanish, also has flamenco classes and flamenco shows.
I just have a brief question. I think, Henry, you talked about how you like when people ask where you're from. Is there a right or wrong or better or worse way of asking that? Perhaps because not everyone may feel like that. And some of it comes maybe from a place of curiosity and like genuity, or some of it may not come from that depending on who's asking the question. I just didn't know.
I never been offended by that question. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just when people ask me, like, where you from? And then, like, and then I start talking, and usually they pay attention. I mean, they never walk away. But I don't think there's, like, right or wrong. I mean, in my opinion, I think it just gets me excited. And when you get excited about something, people listen to you. Maybe sometimes I talk too much, but that's just
So I have thought a lot about that because he's obviously an educated, proud, privileged man, like all of us are up here. But I, as a Spanish speaker, the people who are offended and freaked out when you ask them that is people who are insecure being here and maybe illegal. And so if you ask somebody who has a Spanish accent, like if I say, engage with them in Spanish because I think they're going to be more comfortable, some of them are like, I'm not going to speak Spanish, and some of them just like tuck their heads. And so I have to mostly not speak Spanish to people who I know are Spanish speakers if I feel like they're going to be uncomfortable in being identified as being Latin American specifically.
a good point.
I think also sometimes it's like with me, I'm American, but I'm also Hispanic. And I've had people be like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Arlington. And they're like, but where are you from? That's when it's an issue. It's like, you can ask maybe, oh, what's your background or something like that. If you want to follow up and be like, oh, like a little more than that. But, so I think that's where it's an issue when you're like, oh, where are you from? And someone gives you an answer, but you keep asking.
Yeah.
I think then you can just maybe rephrase the question.
Usually it's me that I feel comfortable because I want to know. If I see Gonzalez or Quesada or somebody, I want to know where they are from.
Yeah.
And they say, I'm from Arlington. And when they say that, I know I have to stop.
Yeah.
That's it.
Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm from Arlington, and then like I'll see like the look on people's faces like, oh, like they're like trying to like add it in their head and like figure it out, and I'm like, but my parents are from like Mexico and Peru, and then they're like, oh, okay.
You fit in the box. Nice. Get back in your box.
So I have a question. This might be a little taboo, I don't know, but since you brought up people confusing you as Mexican numerous times, I've heard that a lot over the years of folks from everywhere else in Latin America getting lumped in with Mexico. And so, I mean, I can understand the obvious reasons why that is a problem because, I don't know, if I went to Bolivia and someone kept calling me Canadian, I'd be like, no, I just look and sound like them, eh? But could y'all explore that a little further, like why that is kind of such a sensitive topic or such an issue? And is the inverse true? I mean, if someone's Mexican and someone thinks they're Costa Rican, do they kind of get as offended? Or I'm kind of curious to explore that notion more because it really dives deeper than just the Hispanic Latino label. Whoever wants to take that.
Wait, so Mexicans are murderers and rapists, so that's one reason you don't want to be associated with being Mexican. All illegal aliens are coming through Mexico, and so they're Mexicans, even though they come through from all over south of Mexico. So I think, people say Mexican. I mean, I've had, my kids have been I was just a spick, that's what they called us, but, they call, what is it, beaner, and people just treat Mexicans, and then so being lumped into this group that's like this lower class of working people who are uneducated and are going to do your lawn. I mean, I can see people associating Mexican to be kind of that, and so of course you don't want to be that, which would be different groups in different countries. Like in Germany, it's like Turkish. Or you might as well. They're Mexicans. Anybody coming in causing problems and illegal and of not your color skin are going to be lumped into that, and it's like the underclass, what it means. Just my idea.
And there's a lot to unpack there because that's a stereotype. So it's not wanting to be associated with the stereotype that Americans might have about Mexicans.
Yeah.
Just kind of, not to put words in your mouth, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's just me. I don't want to speak for everybody.
Can I add on something?
Yes, yeah.
So as an international student, because I don't think anyone in the panel is with a non-US passport, I'm sorry to say, when you go out, and I've never felt this in academia, when you go out in industries and in the field and they know you're not from here and you're here temporarily, I feel like since you're Hispanic, the first question that follows up is, so are you leaving after you finish your master's? And I think it has something to do with that label that she speaks
about. I mean, it's just this perception, but I think it does come from there. Like, but I've never, that being said, in academia, I've never felt it. It's more out into the industry that I've touched base on. So I do think there exists a label on being Hispanic, and then maybe even labeled on Mexican and so on and so forth, which is not a true stereotype if you ask me, but that's what I felt so far.
People asking, like, do you understand what their intention is behind asking that question?
I mean, I feel more as the fact that if I want to stay afterwards, but it's been a repetitive question that I've always gotten when I say I'm an international student and I'm here only for a master's. But I don't know if I were from any other ethnicity, like from any other, if I were not Hispanic, would I get that same question? I don't know.
I think you would.
Yeah.
I think it's also like, it's past the fact, like when you already clarify where you're from, but people keep insisting that they know. And like I said, like if people tell me I'm Mexican, I'm like, but there's all these other parts. I've also had it where I go to Ecuador and people are like, you're from New York, right? And I'm like, I'm from DC. And they'll repeatedly be like, no, you're from New York. And I'm like, those are two different places. So I think it's also like the frustration of like you clarify, but the person's obviously not listening to you. Like they already have this image of you in their head. And even though you're clarifying and you're specify, they still tell you what you are. And I think there's also that frustration.
Who raised these people that you were interacting with?
I've also had
It's
people.
mind-blowing to me, like, that someone could say, I'm from here, and someone else is like, oh, okay, so you're from here.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the
I've had
geographer
also-
in me
Well,
being
yes.
frustrated.
So John, as a geographer, and I was just thinking of adding a point of geography is, you know, if you say where you're from, you're really technically asking about a place. So I asked Gloria where she was from, and she said Arlington, just before this panel. And I think I said something like, well, what about your ethnic heritage, or I don't know, something else that she went on then and told me about her being Mexican. So, you know, you might think of heritage or ethnicity, I don't know, some other way to say if you're wanting to know about someone's background rather than just where they are from. And then the idea that, you know, we have this whole class of people that we know of as Hispanics and Latino, Latina, Latinx, and if you ask any person where you're from or what's your ethnicity from anywhere in the world, they don't say I'm Hispanic or I'm Latino. They say I'm from Colombia, I'm from Brazil, I'm from Peru, you know, and so there's so many different cultures and language differences and historical differences and all these differences that make up that person that we lump all into the same category. And so I think that's just something we should keep in mind. I don't know any answer for it except that, you know, we should just keep in mind people actually have homes and countries and cultures that they identify, or multiple ones, as you do. So
Stemming from that as well, I guess for a lot of people, they hear, oh, you speak Spanish, or oh, you're from a Spanish-speaking country. They think Spanish is just one language. But you go to any of the countries we're from, and there's going to be countless words that we use or different dialects, like Argentinians, double L's and Y's as yo, lluvia, and wherever else, it might be lluvia or yo. So it's not just one language. It's not just Spanish. It's that cultural, it's that dialect, it's that language. So it gets frustrating when people are like, oh, if you say you're from any particular, pick a country from South America, Latin America, and they just assume it's all the same. Because it is different, and when we don't just speak Spanish, we speak Spanish. All of us speak different things.
I mean, even grammatically, you know, the vos sabes versus tú and vosotros. I mean, there's...
Just to answer comments that you made, I came here with a J1, so I had my passport from the R and everything, and I was a Fulbrighter. It's not just to Hispanic. They ask the same to Germans. They ask the same from anyone in Europe. And it's an idea to find out what are your plans later. Are you staying for a PhD? Are you going back? Are you interested in work? It's not, I never took it, and we talked about it because we had meetings from Fulbright where we talk about these issues, and they ask everyone when you're here on an F1 or a J1 visa. No matter if you're Hispanic or where you're coming from, you're just someone from another country, so they ask, what are your plans? Because sometimes they even want to offer you a position, or they want to know, are you staying for the long run? Are you coming back? Are you going back to work there? Are you coming back for a PhD? And that was my experience as being here with a J1 visa study.
I have a question. Has anyone here ever been asked if they speak Mexican? I've actually had someone ask me that. Like to my face, be like, you speak Mexican, right? And I was like, that's not a language. So I was wondering if anyone else had that experience or if it was just me. Yeah.
The same people who ask or claim they speak American, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions?
A plug for geography, we need more of it in this country. In Europe, geography is really big. It's big time. People don't say, oh, you're from geology, right? You know, or something doesn't for me, but because I'm close. But for a lot of people, geography is this unknown thing of learning capitals. I hated in school. And it's like, I don't even know capitals. I'm terrible at capitals, but I am a geographer and have 3 degrees in geography. So I think it's something that we need in the United States, and we need to expand it. And we're not the only Americans. All of the entire continents, and we're not even the only North Americans. Mexico is North America too, and South America is American. And when we go around saying we're Americans, we really mean we're the United States. People who don't really know where America stops or starts.
The best way to describe the maps is travel.
Yeah, exactly. So the travel thing, I thought what Carol says is so important. I led 3 study abroads to Dominican Republic. I'm getting ready to go to New Zealand, a wide, privileged, wealthy place, more progressive than where we live and where I would like to live, except that it's so far from family. But, and I haven't even been there yet, I just know from everything I've heard and read. But the 3 I led to Dominican Republic were amongst my favorite things I've ever done, and even though each one only affected 12 students, I changed their lives, helped change their lives by taking them, not just in Punta Cana where the semester abroad was, but by taking them across Dominican Republic, up into the mountains where poor people are, and everywhere to experience a developing country in its fullness. And I just felt so happy contributing to that, and how it changed me taking a study abroad to Costa Rica, a good place. When I took tropical biology when I was a student, but they put me on the path for what I am doing today.
So you ask the student, like, about those experiences, and they might not be able to remember a single week that they come here for classes in one semester, but that week, they will never forget about it in their life. It will. It's so like it really will impact them.
And then which
It's amazing.
else
So that's why I say, travel, go.
And what happened? Because me and the students. So we need to encourage that at this university.
We need more support. That's
We need
all
more
the point. We need more
support. I
support
had very
from the
little,
college, from the
very hard
university,
for me to travel.
because we're not doing very well in supporting. You know, we claim that we're a global university. Paul is not here, and Bob left. Wow, here's Joe. Who can talk? I can play Joe. But we definitely, you know, we claim that we are a global university, but we don't really have a lot of support for going abroad.
That's right.
They need-
got a new logo though.
Oh, yeah, I heard about the logo.
On the note of the new logo, we are adjourned. Thank you for all the analysts.
Yeah.